Hey there. So in this video, I want to do something slightly different and talk about a productivity methodology that I've been thinking about. And this one comes from Andy Frisella. And if you're not familiar with Andy, he runs a fitness company. I think they sell supplements and those types of things. I'm not going to go too much into who he is. I really want to focus on his productivity methodology. And where I heard about it from was a podcast. So he used to, and I think he still does, I think he still makes a podcast, but it's been renamed and I think it's kind of changed over the last couple of years. But this was on an old podcast, and I'll link to it in the description. It's on an old episode of an old podcast where he talks about the power list. So that's kind of his methodology for getting things done, quote unquote, getting things done, right? So his is the power list. And that's what he used to move forward in life and in business and in fitness, was the power list. And so I wanted to take this video and just talk a little bit about what it is, how it works, and then just a few of my thoughts on what I think of it. So let's start by looking at what it is. The power list is a list of 3 to 5 critical tasks that's created every day. So you'll take a piece of paper, you'll write the day across the top, Monday for example, and then you'll write 3 to 5 critical tasks. And like he mentions in the podcast episode, it sounds so simple. But if you do this, I think there are some real benefits to it. And it's a little bit more than just a task list. So it is a critical task list. And that's important. So what that means is we're not setting goals. We're not writing things on here like lose 40 pounds or make $100,000 starting my own business or something like that. Those are goals. That's not what goes on your power list. So what defines a critical task? Well, a critical task is actionable, meaning something that you can actually do, right? Maybe physically do or maybe digitally do, but it's actionable. It's an action to be taken. Not only is it actionable, but it's something that can be achieved today. It's not going to take you a week to do, not a month to do. It's something you can actually do today. Third, you can control it. So you're not dependent on somebody else. It's something that only you can determine if it gets done or not. And then the last thing is it might make you a little uncomfortable. And that's what makes it a critical task. It's something that you know you should do and you could do it, but it's a little uncomfortable. It puts you a little out of your comfort zone, really. And so those are the types of things that go on your power list. And again, so it's 3 to 5 tasks. And you might ask, well, why do we limit the number of tasks on the power list? And the reason is because you're not going to be able to do 10 or 20 different things that are at this level, right? If we're talking about critical tasks, meaning they're actionable, they make you uncomfortable, they're hard. So these are hard things, they're not easy. So you're not going to be able to do 20 things like this in one day. And even if you could do 20 things like that today, you wouldn't be able to carry it out consistently day over day, week over week. And so that's what we're looking for is this is a simple plan in order to move the needle forward bit by bit, day by day. It builds consistency. All right, so let's take a look at an example. So an example might be Monday. Then I write out my numbers, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What are my critical tasks for Monday? Well, my first one might be walk 1 mile. Maybe I'm struggling a little bit to be active, and so if I can walk 1 mile today, that's a critical task for me. Maybe my second one is read 10 pages, right? So I'm trying to get in the habit of reading, and if I can just read 10 pages today, I'm going to call that a win. All right, my third task is going to be a critical work task. So maybe there's some project I'm working on at work, and there's some critical task that I know if I can accomplish today, that's going to move that project forward. Number 4, maybe right now I'm working on intermittent fasting. And if I can fast until 5 p.m., That's an actionable item that I can do today, and if I do it and achieve it, then that's another win. And maybe my fifth item is reach out to a mentor, right? Sometimes that's a little bit uncomfortable to reach out to a mentor and reach out and maybe ask for guidance or ask for advice. And maybe that's something you need to do or you want to do. And so that could be a critical task, and put that on your list for today. And if you do that, that's another item in the win category. So this is an example of a power list. It's 5 critical tasks that are personal to me. It's not really a to-do list, right? I mean, it's not like check my email, check, send email to my manager, check. No, these are more important than that. These are at a higher level. And one thing you'll notice is that these aren't all work-related. These are kind of looking at your whole self, right? Some of it's work-related, and some of it's not work-related. Some of it's fitness-related. Some of it's mental-related. You might put things on here that are social, Well, like reach out to a mentor is a good example, but maybe it's reach out to a family member if that's difficult for you. Anything that's personal to you that is important and that would really move yourself to the next level. That's what we're looking at with the power list. Okay, so now that we've seen what a power list looks like, let's talk a little bit about the process. So as you're going through and you're looking at your power list for the day, and you start marking things off, it doesn't need to be in any order. You might do your critical work task first, and that's okay. You don't have to start with the number 1. You can start with any of the numbers, and you start marking them off, right? So I did my first critical work task. I'm putting a line through it and saying that one's completed. And then maybe I read my 10 pages and I'm putting a line through that one. So as you do each task, you're putting a line through it. Now, once you've gotten all 5 tasks completed and you put a line through each one, then you put a big W at the top of the page. And this is an important part of this. You put a big W at the top of the page, and what that means and what it signifies is that you've won the day. And that's the goal of the power list, is to win the day. And so one of the ideas behind this, as you start, getting a week into this or maybe 2 weeks into this, you start winning multiple days, you start winning several days in a row. You start building some confidence, and you start seeing that you can do the things that you set out to do, the things that you promised yourself you would do. And so by winning the day and putting the big W at the top of the page, that is a big part of this, because you start to believe in yourself more. The more W's you get, the more times you win the day, you start to believe in yourself more. And another part of this is that you only focus on one day at a time, right? We're not focusing on a week at a time. We're not setting a monthly goal. We're setting out to win the day. And it's something that we can really get done today. And it's something you're able to control today. And so that's an important part of this also. Now there's a third important part of this too. And that is, once you've won the day, you should go enjoy it, right? You should go do something that you enjoy doing. Maybe you enjoy video games. Maybe you enjoy playing guitar. Maybe you enjoy a Netflix documentary or whatever the case may be. Whatever you enjoy, go do that, because you've accomplished 5 critical tasks for yourself for that day, and that should be celebrated. So let's talk about changing your list over time, because there's a couple tasks on my example list, if we look at it again, that might go on my list every day. So things like walk 1 mile, when I'm working on my fitness, read 10 pages while I'm working on building a reading habit, and fasting until 5 p.m. while I'm working on my intermittent fasting. So those are things that are going to go on my list just about every day, probably every day. And there will come a certain point where there will no longer be a struggle for you. For example, maybe reading 10 pages has become more of a habit for me. So reading has become more of a routine. I'm doing my reading every day. Maybe every morning I get up and I read 10 to 15 pages and it's no problem for me. Well, that no longer belongs as a critical task on your power list. And in fact, you need to open up that space, that slot on your power list, and put something else in there. Something that is maybe a little more uncomfortable, that you're struggling with a little bit more. And that way you're continuing to move that needle forward in whatever aspect of life that task goes into. You want to keep pushing forward. You don't want to become stagnant with your power list and just make it, these are tasks that I do every day and they're easy for me. That's not the purpose of it. The purpose is to push yourself and continuously push yourself forward with critical tasks that make you a bit uncomfortable. So reviewing what you put on your list and changing your list as you move forward is appropriate, and that is something you should do as part of this methodology. All right, so I want to end with just a few of my thoughts on what I think of this methodology. And number one is, I like the simplicity of it. I like being able to sit down with a pen and paper, maybe in the morning with a cup of coffee, or maybe the night before as I'm thinking about the day ahead, and just sit down and write out what my critical tasks are for that day. The next thing I like is that it's all-encompassing, right? It's not fitness related, it's not work related, it's not anything, but basically it's looking at everything you do holistically, right? And so what are your critical tasks for your whole life, right? What is going to move you forward in all aspects? And so you really got to sit down and think about what you're writing on the list and make sure that those are the areas that you want to improve on. And it's not all going to be work related, or it shouldn't be, right? You probably have many areas of your life. Maybe they're financial, maybe it's social, maybe you've got a hobby that you want to move forward on, maybe you got a side hustle. All these things you should take into account when you're sitting down and building out your power list. All right, the third thing that I really like about this is that it is a confidence booster, right? The more times you win the day, the more confidence you build. When you start winning some days, and then you start winning some weeks, and then you start winning a month or two, well, now you're really building some confidence. And so I like that part of this methodology is that you can physically see, by flipping back through your notebook, the big W's at the top of the page, meaning those are the days that you've won. Well, that's a real confidence booster. All right, so what's the downside of this methodology? Well, the one downside that I can think of is that it might be hard to know when to switch things out. If I go back to my read 10 pages a day, if I happen to take that out too early, if I am feeling pretty good about my reading and I take it out, it might be easy for me to just fall out of the habit of reading because, well, it's no longer a critical task for me, so it's not that important anymore, and maybe I just stop reading altogether. I can see that happening. Or the other side of that is, if I leave the read 10 pages on there too long, well, now it's an easy task for me, right? And I'm not opening up that slot for something that's a little more uncomfortable and is going to move me forward a little bit more. So I think that's a bit of a gray area, and it might be a little bit of a balancing act to try and get that part right. Well, that's all for this video. Let me know in the comments what you think of Andy Frisella's power list and the aspect of winning the day. Well, thanks for watching. Have a good one.